Hey Sam, how's it going?
Hey, Tanay, good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So where are you right now? Are you in Singapore or somewhere in Korea?
No, I'm in London right now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, just
So
enjoying the sun and rain here. It's been great.
I can imagine. So I guess you flew out from Paris to London.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I've been nomading for I guess since the beginning of the year. So it's been great.
Oh wow, I actually need some travel tips from you then because too much travel after a certain point gets a little it adds to the fatigue for me. But I guess it's a part and parcel of the job, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you need to be a certain type of person to kind of be very flexible and adapt to I guess constantly being changing and moving around. But it's been great. I think that's one of the benefits of crypto. This like globally distributed kind of industry, it really, and everywhere I go, there's always someone fascinating and intelligent to learn from. So it's that's passionate about crypto. So it's been great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think like who were some interesting people you met in Paris? And I guess we'll start in a couple of minutes as we wait for people to trickle in. But yeah, in the interim, like how was the conference for you and Big Brain as a whole?
I had like 3 or 4 people join conference in Paris, and it was great. I think it was probably one of the biggest turnouts of the year. So literally felt like everyone was there. So just a great opportunity to meet, old friends and new, and just connect with people face to face. I think that's one of the things that's, sometimes missing in crypto, where yeah, everything is obviously done online, behind avatars, etc. And it's always great and different to actually meet people face to face. I mean, I think it's needed, as people to have that social interaction.
Yeah, yeah, no, I absolutely get that.
Yeah.
I think there were so many folks that I'd been talking to over Twitter or Telegram for the last 6 months. And when we met in person, it felt like the relationship became more real, and the trust factor also just went up by like a tenfold multiple. So it was amazing. And I think Caleb was one of those guys that I'd been talking to talking to on Twitter and
Hey,
Telegram for a while. And hey guys, and then when we finally met in person, it was a delight for sure. To kick things off, can you please introduce yourself to the room?
yeah, sure. So again, thanks for having me. So yeah, my name's Sam, one of the partners at Big Brain Holdings. Um, I guess my journey into crypto is not super interesting, so I'll kind of speed run that, and then maybe I'll explain more about our firm. So I guess for myself, I studied mechatronics engineering, which is, I guess, in the category of automation and robotics. I worked as an engineer in the industry for about 6 to 7 years. Uh, in that time, I grew a strong interest in finance and global macroeconomics. It was very fascinating for me at the time. Investing, and at the same time, also I guess first got exposed to crypto back in 2016 uh, as I guess a retail participant, but and really just falling down the rabbit hole. But it was really 2019, 2020 when DeFi started to emerge in a real way, when I really got serious about the space and I wanted to pursue it full time. I was spending, literally the whole, every day, all day, just reading and being on chain. I couldn't get away from it. And so, I made the conscious decision to just pursue it full time. So yeah, and the rest is history. So I joined a crypto hedge fund that also operated a private venture book before joining Big Brain Holdings, where I am now as one of 4 partners. So maybe
Yeah.
I can go straight into kind of the, I guess, more about the firm. So yeah, like I said, we're 4 partners collectively. We've been doing private venture within crypto since around 2016, 17 as well. Um, really amassing a portfolio, being very deep in this space, being very crypto native, uh, And also, we have two kind of strategies. So we have a direct venture investing portfolio, but we also have a fund of funds as well. So we have a lot of strategic partnerships with many different funds and institutions within crypto. And we also have no LPs. And so we have an open and flexible mandate. And I think that's probably, one of our biggest strengths, that we don't have any external investors and I guess forces that can dictate, how we invest within the space. So, we are, I guess we consider ourselves to be generalists within crypto. Essentially, the flexibility and opportunity to invest in anything and everything that touches crypto, which is, again, I think really great considering how early and young the space is, that new technologies, new use cases are emerging all the time. And to have a fixed or restricted kind of mandate can really prohibit us to do well and to actually get exposure to maybe things that can aren't significant now, but can be so in the future. And so that, I think there's two categories of theses we have. So, there's a very deliberate and explicit investment thesis that, we have formulated ourselves and that we debate over internally, but then we also are very open to emerging theses and strategies and quickly adapt to how things change and evolve within the space. So, and then our investment profile, I guess, historically predominantly has been weighted in infrastructure, which is a pretty broad category, which I can go into later on. But we also very interested in the application layer. Again, something I can go into later on as well. And I guess finally to add is that, we're very crypto native. From the beginning, we were not investors, we were more participants in the space, really believing and buying into, everything that crypto and blockchain enables. And, being on chain, being down on the ground, within the communities, talking with founders, talking to other users, and actually using the DeFi protocols, buying NFTs, going to the events, et cetera, et cetera. So we pride ourselves in that, and I think that's where we add value as real users and people that are connected within the space and have seen the space grow, over the last 5 to 7 or so years that we've been in the space.
Thank you for that kind of entire walkthrough. I guess it gives us a lot of substance to talk about. I think one of the points that really kind of shows in your investments that Big Brain makes is the fact that you have your own school of thought, and because you don't have own outside investors, you have a lot of flexibility over the way you can kind of take bets in plays that interest you. And you've spoken about the concentration that you've had in the infra layer so far. But there's a lot of talk about the infra layer consolidating now and an application layer forming on top. How do you view this infra app cycle narrative that everybody's now trying to navigate? And I'd love to kind of hear as to why do you think now is the time to be switching focus?
I guess, like I said, our firm has historically been pretty weighted heavily into infrastructure. And, that can, that consists of, anything from layer ones, layer twos, middleware solutions, bridge solutions, et cetera, et cetera. And so we've been quite excited about that space. And the reason for that is essentially that, crypto is still incredibly nascent, and I'll probably say that a lot today, but like there's a popular chart of the number of internet users overlaid with the current number of crypto users. And, when you look at that chart, crypto is still where the internet was in the late 90s. And if we believe, crypto will reach the sort of mass adoption that the internet had and has now, we don't have the scale and the infrastructure to actually house all those users. I think like the statistics right now, obviously very rough, is that there's probably about 400 million crypto asset owners. So that's more, people that just own Bitcoin or Ethereum or some other old on maybe an exchange. But in terms of actual on-chain users, the active on-chain users, maybe there's only about 10 million. So it's incredibly small. But despite, how small the market is now and the number of users there are now, we just don't have the scale. In the last bull market, I think at the peak, doing a Uniswap transaction or swap cost about over $100, right? And depositing liquidity into a LP pool and on Uniswap cost $200-300 plus. So obviously that's not very conducive towards getting mass adoption and everyday people to come into this space and actually start using these DeFi protocols and have the actual user experience to be comfortable and want to be actively participating. And so that's not happening on the L1s we had back then. Obviously Ethereum being the main one, and so constantly this constant capital injection and investment into infrastructure is desperately needed. And on the flip side, as investors, infrastructure investing has been has provided good returns and has found strong product market fit. There has been the prominent thesis, I think, developed by USV back in way back in I think 2014, the Fat Protocol thesis. Is the notion that, or an observation that in Web3, within the tech stack, most of the value accrues to the protocol layer, which is a reversion of what existed in Web2, where obviously most of the value accrued to applications, whether it be Facebook, Google, etc. Whereas the internet protocols, HTTP or TCP/IP, really accrued little to no value, right? And so the real emergence of tokens and network effects have really propelled the idea of real value being had in the protocols, because that's where all the networks, the network effects exist. Yeah, so that's why we've historically done a lot of investments into the infrastructure space, but I think you asked, why we think that why it might be a time to pivot or focus maybe a little more on applications. Right? At the end of the day, a lot of this infrastructure development is creating a product for which, no market or very small market exists right now. There are no users or very little users, whereas there's millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment going into infrastructure. And at the end of the day, infrastructure can attract developers, but it's not going to be the what attracts users, right? And that's going to be applications. But that's why we believe that this is a time to be investing in applications. Another reason I think why it hasn't been as hot as infrastructure is it is more I guess risky within the backdrop of crypto, of what people are normally used to. Because we're in a bear market right now, the feedback loops are a lot looser and longer to find product market fit. It's hard to get that immediate response from your potential user base, and so that's obviously been very risky for a lot of investors, and also a lot of the investments that went into the application space, in the last bull market have, unfortunately not done very well. That's again a product of users leaving the space and teams kind of running out of money or struggling again to find product market fit, which there's a very small market for. So that's why there's been a lot of, I guess, depression and pessimism in the application space across the board, whether that's DeFi, gaming, NFTs, consumer applications. But I believe now is the time that we should refocus our efforts and look for teams and support teams that are building applications that can, bring in the next, million, 100 million users. But infrastructure still has the place. We still need the scale. We still need the 10x, 100x improvements in user experience that we don't have right now. And obviously, we're seeing examples of that with account abstraction and you know and plans. We see a lot of different innovations happening that can ultimately help the user navigate the space easier, where right now people are using MetaMask and to start transactions every time. RPC nodes sometimes when networks get congested, we need to um, maneuver around, and so that's not again conducive towards getting mass adoption and mainstream users to come into the space.
Yeah. I love that answer, and there's a lot to unpack there. One thing that I'd like to kind of bookmark for sometime later in the conversation would be the point on value accrual and the FAT protocol thesis, right? I wonder if value accrual equals good investment returns, or is that the only place that you should be focusing on where the value accrual is? And that's something that's still up for debate, which kind of is being experimented with to see if applications building on top of these protocols, what business models emerge, and if these models can kind of justify the investments that now investors are looking to make in the space. And talking about the cycle that you spoke about briefly between the infra and the apps, which I think, yeah, I love the fact that it history often rhymes. And when you look at internet history, there was a point where a lot of these websites that were live had to run their own servers, maintain their own infrastructure. But now, as infra scaled and the cost to set up this infrastructure has kind of gone down significantly, it's very easy to now spin up these applications on top of it, and it's become cheaper when you talk about the cost of operation. And I think talking about this now, seemingly imminent transition to an application layer focus, what are the key things that you see will help us bridge that gap? One of the things that come to mind is a developer experience should kind of be the main focus for us to be able to make that transition between infra and the kind of application layer focus. But is there anything else that kind of comes to mind when we talk about making that transition successfully?
Right. So the transition towards getting more developers or more users?
Yeah. So like more developers, like how do we build a healthy application layer ecosystem, right? Like what is needed right now so that hopefully we get those killer apps which can get the users on.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of progress is being made by various different ecosystems, L1s and L2s, that help, the developer experience. There's a lot of tooling that's being created in the past. Ultimately, time has been on the EVM side, and so there's so much tooling and support for app developers on EVM. But now we have the likes of Rust-based, um, general purpose smart contract blockchains like Solana and recently Sui and Aptos with the Move language. Again, all of these developments really help developers. Move language is a great example of the kind of next, I guess, iteration of what again helps developers. They have more expressibility, more inbuilt security features, resistant to a lot of different vulnerabilities like reentrancy. Essentially, it just makes it harder for developers to make mistakes, which can be critical in the context of DeFi. So yeah, I think there is a lot of progress in innovation being made, and really I think it's more on the developers now to come up with really interesting use cases and execute on those ideas and visions and bring those users in. And there's a technical side to that, but there's also a strategic launch, strategic product marketing, and yeah, those sort of strategies that I think a lot of crypto founders kind of forget about or kind of deny. Those Web2 strategies that are so important when it comes to actually launching a product for mass adoption and users. Whereas I think a lot of crypto native people really focus on the current existing pool of users now, and so it's very popular to mention the PvP market, where people are really just fighting over the same pie, rather than really expanding the pie and bringing in those non-crypto native users.
And you did mention reentrancy. I read this really cool way to talk about the EVM, or like the Ethereum smart contract environment. It is the most adversarial environment for a developer to deploy code in. And you also mentioned the other kind of smart contract environments that are coming up with Move and the Rust-based kind of languages also taking up steam. In fact, we saw Solana release Solang during ETHCC, which was a very kind of welcome thing between the developer communities, because you could now also develop in Solidity on Solana and things like that. But more broadly speaking, across this is reflected across Big Brain's investments, where you see a focus on not just ETH but also other alternative chains, both L1s and L2. So how are you thinking about Ethereum and then the other competing ecosystems, not competing, so to speak, but just other choices that exist? And yeah, I guess there is a very diverse school of thought that you come in with, so would love to hear more about it.
Yeah, sure. So I can, I guess, tackle that in two ways. So number one, like our investment approach historically has been very ecosystem focused. And so, for example, if you take Ethereum, we would invest, in the core Ethereum asset itself, but then we would really, work closely with the foundational, the core teams, the ecosystem teams, work with all the people that are building significant things in the space. So, whether that's all the DeFi apps, NFTs, gaming, etc., and start venture investing around that ecosystem as well. And because we would be deep in that ecosystem, we would hope to be picking the best teams and the best founders in the space, again, from a venture perspective. And so that's historically something that we've, done a lot of, and we continue to do now. And Solana is a good example of something that we were investors very early on from 2018. And we, helped to support the ecosystem in many different ways. Obviously, just venture investing itself, helping the founders, come into the space, because obviously a lot of the founders and developers were from Web2, specifically for Solana. And then, even building those open source tools and products ourselves as well. And so that's kind of our ecosystem approach. And so we do like, finding new, compelling and promising ecosystems that we think we can help and add value and again, help them grow. And the other aspect to that question and how I'd answer that is the space is still very nascent. And so, I mentioned costs on Ethereum, were very high. But not to knock Ethereum, we still invest, in Ethereum. We hold Ethereum. We invest in projects on Ethereum. And Ethereum is the most significant project since Bitcoin. Really expanding the use cases for blockchain exponentially. Creating virtual machine and enabling programmability in a decentralized manner. They were really the first to do that. But again, the space is young, and to say that's the be all and end all is maybe a bit naive on our part. And so, although Ethereum did something amazing, that was the very first iteration of the idea, and to say nothing else is necessarily better or offers other unique benefits is maybe short-sighted. And so that's how we look at it. And I think Ethereum has its place, and obviously they've taken the vision and sole focus of being, the most secure and trustless settlement layer, and then obviously taking this, modular approach and vision with L2s and data availability and really uh, separating that stack. But then something like Solana has a very different focus and a set of trade-offs. Their sole focus is to be ultra high throughput chain with light speed latency with a single global state. And I think that's a very admirable goal and something that's not, that Ethereum isn't necessarily focusing on. And again, so there are these trade-offs. Again, Sui is another great example, a founder focusing on building an environment that will hyper-focus on an environment that developers are comfortable with, especially Web2 developers, Silicon Valley, engineers, that's their culture and that's where they came from. Developing Move, language that's, again, much more better in a lot of different ways for developers. Creating, concepts like, objects and, other features that make it better for certain applications like, NFTs and gaming, social applications, consumer applications. Again, Sui's focuses on expanding the pie, bringing in non-crypto native users, abstracting away a lot of the complexity, not only for users, but also for the developers themselves as well. And so these are different kind of cultural aspects and technical aspects that different L1s or L2s or, different teams focus on. And, that's why we like to continue to invest in new technologies beyond just Ethereum.
No, that's a very good answer, because as you mentioned, the space is so young. It's you can't tell with certainty as to what will work and what will not. And it's always a great idea to diversify capital across various experiments, which obviously stand your own tests. And the modular versus the monolithic debate has been going on for a while. And I think one point that I feel is very interesting, one that often gets brought up, is the fragmentation of developer experience in the modular stack, right? Like you have to think about compatibility with now three different infrastructure stakeholders instead of just one, which can often add to a poor developer experience. But that's like a very interesting position to be in. So what parameters do you use to evaluate, or like what is a framework for thinking about the modular versus monolithic debate? There may not be a right answer, but there could be more tools that we could be using.
Yeah, I think it really just comes back to trade-offs. So there's no perfect solution. I don't believe that monolithic will be the future. I don't think that modular will be the only future. I think there will be some type of blend of the two, or maybe more. And as the space continues to develop, we don't try to predict exactly how things will play out. But there are certain advantages and disadvantages. So with a monolithic blockchain, like you mentioned, you remove a lot of the complexity that comes from fragmentation from modular approaches. You have a single global state. You can synchronize across all of the different user applications pretty seamlessly. And so there are certain applications where you need that. Obviously Ethereum, the main chain itself is a monolithic chain, and we see a lot of different concepts like atomic transactions that you can't have if you have a fragmented modular state. With Ethereum's rollup approach, we now have to solve the problem of bridging all of these different execution environments, and that comes with a whole host of problems and challenges itself, and then users having to, and it creates problems in the user experience as well, like frictions across bridging and what chain am I on, what nodes am I interacting with. It's all of these problems, and ultimately the idea is that we extract away a lot of this, but I think again it comes really back to trade-offs and how things cloud in that way, but it's also the idea about application-specific infrastructure. So I think there will be certain use cases that will be conducive towards, having this type of modular stack. Obviously like Cosmos and application-specific rollups are a great example of, implementing something like that. But then there will be some use cases and user bases that want a general purpose monolithic blockchain with a global state, with extremely high throughput, that that certain applications, use cases, and communities need.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think to switch up gears a little bit, kind of going to the second leg, which is the application layer, there will be a lot of things that will have to be thought of from a Web3 first principles lens. One of the pieces that you put out, I think 2-3 days ago, was AdTech and growth, a Web3 perspective. And I was kind of going through that and kind of taking some notes. But broadly, which ideas do you think will be rethought, and ads being one of those and growth being one of those? And we can obviously deep dive into that. But broadly speaking, what are some areas that you think will be rethought entirely because it has to be Web3 native?
I think like when it comes to crypto, like everyone has their own path to crypto and why they believe it's significant and important for our future. And we have kind of broad ideas around different ways of thinking about crypto as well. But I think foundationally, before I get into more of the specific kind of applicational use cases, we believe crypto is a natural extension and evolution of the internet. So, and a popular, and that's not a controversial statement, but a popular kind of conceptualization of the trajectory of the internet is that Web 1 will enable the ability to distribute information. It was read only. Web 2 was the ability to create, read and write, and Web 3 is about ownership. And I think the concept of ownership is really powerful, and that's probably the most significant aspect of, I think, what crypto enables for me anyway. And that's really founded on the idea or the principle that people have like an innate desire to be, for belonging and freedom, and owning ideas, explicitly in the way we can do now with crypto is not something we've been, able to do now with, with consensus, and having, sovereignty from, outside external forces, again, is very powerful. So rooted in, again, our desire to be, free from government, companies, and having sovereignty. And we can look back through history, to see how the working class were overruling kings and rulers, and all the way to modern, period like Occupy Wall Street and overthrowing the 1%, and all the problems we have in society right now. And what drives all of this? It's a sense of wanting to have freedom and taking back what people believe to be, rightfully theirs. And so, again, the idea and concept of ownership, and again, parallels to, I think this trend of, like what drove the meme stock craze in the last, few years. It's taking back ownership of brands and companies and ideas that we love from institutions and Wall Street and hedge funds and the wealthy. And I think it's this trend towards hyper-financialization, speculation, ownership, belonging to communities that crypto uniquely enables is going to continue. And that's, and that really converges towards like the tokenization of everything, which I truly believe will happen in some time in the future. The idea of owning a piece of something that's not bound to any one central platform or environment. And so you can own a piece of your car or home or whatever it may be, an idea or social tokens or a celebrity or your family. It's this tokenization, this ability to own and in a pessimistic way speculate on things is trending as a society, and crypto and network effects and internet and blockchain really enables all of this. Um, yeah, and so that as a foundation then kind of leads into like what we see in DeFi and game Web3 gaming and gambling fi, obviously is becoming a hot topic. Like all of these, I think converge towards this idea of um, tokenization, ownership of ideas and assets and communities and environments that we spend more and more of our time in. I guess so that leads into kind of like maybe two specific categories that I'm personally very interested in, and they're kind of broad, popular themes. So DeFi and gaming. So DeFi, was obviously a reflection or realization of the original kind of vision for crypto to becoming a financial layer. And DeFi has probably found the most strongest, product market fit in the space. Like the amount of TVL, the amount of billions of transaction volume that we have on chain is, I think, has blown any or anybody's expectation of how quickly it would come to fruition within the last few years. And I think the problems that have surrounded it, from Luna, FTX to all the liquidation cascades that mire the space, haven't really diminished my optimism about the space. I think ultimately what DeFi and decentralization enables is, all the things that, people use them for now: frictionless movement of assets, capital, tenfold, hundredfold efficiency improvements, taking out, removing the middleman, and all these centralization bottlenecks, limitless ways of activating capital. I think a really important feature is the transparent ledger. So that exposes, hidden leverage and bad debt, even with all of the problems of, 3 hours and FTX, et cetera. Those were all actually traditional finance, off-chain related problems or, TradFi related problems. Whereas, all on-chain DeFi, operated seamlessly, as per design. Everything, there was no obfuscation of leverage, bad debt, or bad collateral. And these are problems that traditional finance has now as well. In 2008, the general global financial crisis was really rooted in the obfuscation of so much collateral, so much leverage, so much bad debt in the space that wasn't exposed. And crypto really solves that. So I think DeFi becomes is a financial rail and infrastructure for the modern era. And then, like I said, the tokenization of everything blows up, I think, the addressable market for DeFi by orders and orders of magnitude. So that, we still are very bullish on DeFi. We continue to invest in DeFi, and we still continue to use DeFi. The other, I guess, sector that I'm very interested in is gaming, and I think it's actually sentiment is pretty bad right now. But obviously there's a lot of hype with Axie. But what's important is that gaming, even in a conventional sense, is growing extremely rapidly. More than a third of the global population are considered gamers. The gaming industry is greater than the film, music, and TV industries combined, which not many people know. Every new generation spends more and more of their waking hours online, on in games, on social media, and that's all kind of in the same realm. I don't think gaming is specifically the 2D or 3D kind of virtual world that in a conventional sense. It's everything that we do online, and so I think NFTs, crypto have the potential to act as an accelerant to this already hyper growth industry. It unbinds so many different virtual economies that we're used to, that are stifled by centralization and manipulation. And I think Vitalik's original the reason why he actually started Ethereum was, I think he said a thing, I think, wow, like World of Warcraft, and he had an item or something that he really liked, or a spell or something, and the game company changed it, and it became reduce in value, and that really hurt his experience in playing the game, and which he loved and spent, people spend so much time in. And so crypto and on-chain, assets and decentralization solves a lot of these problems, and again, I think will hyperscale like the industry even more than it is now.
I think there are a few threads that you'll kind of go deeper on what you said. You started off with ownership, and I think I read this really cool line which said that blockchains transforms a passionate audience to passionate owners, which I think is really powerful. And the element of ownership goes really deep down the human emotion stack, which can unlock an entirely new paradigm for behaviors that we haven't seen before, which could be beyond like just financial use cases, right? You spoke about DeFi, and I do agree that speculation is probably one of the biggest use cases of crypto so far. Like that's where we found true PMF. You also mentioned GambleFi, and I think that's something which bridges the gap between taking a speculation as a product which is just for crypto natives to the broader audience. Now anybody else could tap into this exciting space of speculation, and that's what I guess GambleFi as a sector could be doing. And gaming, so I think one of the reasons that there is some pessimism around gaming is it's rooted in, I guess, infrastructure bottlenecks, which are a talk around around the market, so to speak. And there are a lot of game engines that are also trying to solve this very problem. So we could go deeper on GambleFi or gaming's infrastructure issues. Either way, you kind of wish, I guess.
Yeah, I think with gaming infrastructure, that's pretty easy. I think we've spoke about kind of the different solutions that are emerging to roll ups as a service, different L1s that have, promising high throughput, low latency. These are all solutions that are being making progress within the infrastructure space, and making it easier for developers to build. Yeah, but with gambling, I think it comes back to the idea of like, hyper financialization,
Yeah.
stock trading, this like trend towards people wanting to own more and speculate more on ideas
Yeah.
and concepts that you couldn't do before. And crypto like really enables really fast like listings and creation of those tokens, which you can own and speculate on. And so, I think we'll see a convergence of like this GambleFi, GameFi, DeFi, like these will all become almost maybe synonymous in a way, at least kind of the financial aspect of it. And really just enabling, but also providing the capacity for people to, the society to do what, it's trending to desire, which is, again, this ownership, speculation, financialization. That, again, blockchain is probably the only thing that can really enable that.
So yeah, I think we can also talk about your latest piece on ads in Web3. In the Web2 world, there are more than $300 billion in revenue, which kind of companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook make through ads. So you kind of look at this entire stack evolving from a more Web3 perspective, because on-chain data is entirely different. It is open for everyone and also private at the same time, which kind of forces builders to kind of think of newer and more innovative models. But sometimes when we talk about ads in Web3, there is an inherent ick that some people have, and they're like, okay, I thought Web3 was going to be free of ads because there are these newer business models that can emerge. So how do you think about that, right? Like, why do you think that ad economy will translate with such intensity in Web3 as well? And if so, why?
Well, I think there's a potential for crypto and Web3 to be a solution for the like traditional ad tech industry. So cookies, are broadly going to be banned, I think, from next year there's already a lot of privacy laws instituted in the EU, where it's very hard for companies and institutions to find out data, will get data and more information about their users, which adds you need to know who your users are to show the right ads. That's the whole point of AdTech. Traditional ads on television would show specific types of ads during programs that can generally model that user group. So if you're showing cartoons, mostly the ads shown for toys for young children, and et cetera, et cetera. And so the problem now is that because this data is being obfuscated or not being made available to companies and brands, that ad tech industry is in probably serious trouble. And the solution may be crypto. And so, right now, we see all of this on-chain information and data about users and behavior about users, and it's all made available. But we still need a lot of this infrastructure that can pass this data, index this data, and make it actually useful. But at the same time, as this data is being made available to these companies, you can actually start to compensate or share the value back to the users, and crypto and blockchain uniquely enables that, and there are projects and startups that are trying to implement that and solve that problem. So that's I guess that, yeah, that's on that aspect of ad tech. But generally, growth in crypto is a pretty not many people talk about it. There's a lot of organic and crypto native methods for achieving growth. Obviously we have airdrops, we have incentivization through financial means, but there's still been a lack of implementing traditional means of growth that Web2 is really perfected and optimized. And so again, there are companies, teams that are trying to really start to integrate those ideas and those strategies within crypto as well, again, to reach that broader non-crypto native user base.
Thank you for that. I think that's a really like regulation being the problem and crypto being the answer to something is something that kind of tends to flip how we kind of think about the space as a whole. But there are a lot of interesting ideas that you mentioned in the piece as well. We link that article in the description here around enriching this data further by leveraging zero knowledge proofs to bridge your Web2 data as well to add more color to this data, so to speak. And rooted in the principle of self-sovereignty, some models emerging to monetize this data as you sell it for ads and other use cases. So a lot of interesting stuff in there for sure. And I think as we kind of approach the final 10 minutes of the conversation, I'd like to circle back to something that we had bookmarked earlier in the conversation, which is value accrual and how will the investment returns get distributed across the protocol layer, the application layer, and the whole stack. Could you start off by actually even breaking down the entire stack, so to speak? So protocol layer, do you have some microscopic breakdown of what the middleware layer looks like, and then the application layer sitting on top, or how do you view that whole stack? And then we can discuss value accrual.
I really just reduce it down to the application layer and the infrastructure layer, and kind of the middleware stack kind of exists in the infrastructure layer. And then you can go more granular than that. You can go down to the modular stack itself within the infrastructure layer. So looking at data availability, looking at execution layer, looking at consensus, et cetera, and so forth. But from an investing perspective and how we look at it at a high level, yeah, it's really the application layer and the infrastructure layer. And I mentioned the FAT protocol thesis and how that's really proven itself to date. But I think that is, we started at an extreme of most of the value is going to the infrastructure layer. So most of the top 10 with different L1s, obviously Bitcoin and Ethereum being the two major ones. And whereas in Web2, most of the value is in the application space. But I think ultimately, down the line, we will converge towards a balance between the two. And we're already starting to see that in action. So yes, most of the top 50 are infrastructure projects, but we still have a lot of DeFi projects. Stable coins make up a lot of the top 10, 20 as well. And that's, you can really consider that to be an application as well. And as we start to see more and more users come in and the use cases become more important, and we see more abstraction of the infrastructure layer so that users don't actually see or interact with infrastructure, then applications become more and more interesting and accrue more value. Like obviously a popular notion of when people use the internet, people don't understand TCP over IP. People don't really understand how HTTP protocols work. People don't understand the engineering behind the web and the different applications they use. So in the same vein, in crypto right now, you kind of do have to understand some of these things to use to interact and be active on chain. You need to know how to use MetaMask, how to set it all up, be private keys, etc., and all of that. But I think ultimately down the line, again, a lot of that would be abstracted and moved from and obfuscated from the user. And so in that way, we will start to see more convergence towards a balance. I think we'll see strong value flow even in the application layer as well going forward and within crypto.
No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And this barbell approach towards the infra and the application layer definitely makes you think. So I guess we've spoken a lot about the thesis that you fund and you have your outlook on some sectors. But when it comes to evaluating startups, right? Like what does the cycle of a deal inside the fund look like? And as you kind of cover that, can you also please give us some insight into how do you evaluate the founding team and the founders of any project?
Again, you can really reduce it down into three different categories that we look at when we evaluate a startup. So it's the product, so what the team is actually trying to create, with the market. So what market does that product exist in? So if, for example, if it's a game, it's within the gaming market. If it's DeFi, it's within the DeFi market, etc. And then the team. And so we look at the I guess the quality of the founders. And different VCs will weight those things differently. If you're a later stage VC, then you're probably going to look at the product and market much more closely. The product's probably already been developed and maybe even have launched with users and revenue. But for us, as early stage investors, really the biggest thing we're looking at is the team, right? Probably the team first, and then we have a good sense of kind of the different markets in the space, and so probably the product is I think product to market is actually pretty similar in how we view it. But like because we're early stage, it's really at the ideation phase. There is no real product that's being fully developed, and things can change over time as the market and the team develop within that market. And when we look at founders, the biggest things and characteristics that we look for is probably grit and motivation. So a lot of successful founders in Web2 will say that being a startup founder is like eating glass, and I think it's staring into the abyss. So it's this, you don't have a lot of freedom and time to pursue anything else. That's really, the startup is your baby. There's going to be so many new challenges and hurdles to overcome. And a lot of founders give up along the way. It takes a lot to be a founder. of a startup and actually get it to a point of success and product market fit with users. And that's very high level and vague. How do we actually identify that? So we talk to a lot of founders. We see 20 plus pitch decks a week. We speak to together as a team, maybe to 20 founders a week as well. And so we do build this kind of innate intuition around founders, and we also look at the motivation. So what really is driving them to build this company? Is it financial incentives, or is it some sort of personal problem they've had that they're trying to solve, or some really ideological or vision they have for how to change the world in some small or big way. And we really try to identify that, and we value that. And then finally, obviously, there's the more fundamental, tangible aspects like experience, skill set, and then maybe a proven ability to execute. These are all important factors as well when it comes to looking at assessing a founder, and they're trying to predict their ability to actually implement the original vision they have. And so it really distills down to that. It's really the founders and ability to execute, the motivation, and how much can they persevere and persist through all of the ups and downs of being a startup founder.
I really resonate with that answer, because that's something that we also focus on very heavily at Builders Tribe. When we kind of take a look at a lot of early stage startups, we heavily index on perseverance and the ability to just show up, right? Because chewing glass and looking into the abyss is actually a very hard thing to do on a week-on-week basis. And if you somehow manage to do that, then hopefully you get to the other side, which is PMF and beyond. But yeah, Sam, I think this was a delightful conversation. I learned a lot today, and I hope a lot of the attendees did too. Any closing remarks? And you can also share some information about, if a founder who's starting off today, how could they get in touch with you or the Big Brain Holdings team, so to speak, and what would be the easiest way to kind of get your attention, I guess?
It's my pleasure. Thank you again for having me. It was great talking with you. I think to reach us, we're kind of everywhere in the space. Hopefully, someone who knows us, but we're also very active on Twitter. I think we can share. We do look at our DMs as well, and we can share our Telegram as well. If anyone wants to reach out and talk, we're always open.
That's really amazing. And I think for some people who stuck around for the session so long, just one final question, I guess, what would you say is your most controversial take in crypto right now? And then that could be a good closing note and some food for thought for everybody.
That's a tricky one. Let me think about that. I don't know how controversial. I mean, there's so many controversial takes that there's probably not a unique one or original one, but probably the idea of roll-ups being the only solution and the end all be all is, I don't believe that's true. And there is a space for monolithic blockchains and new L1s that can offer different traits and characteristics that I think roll-ups don't provide. And I've obviously talked about that a little bit. So, and the problem of value accrual to roll-ups is also very challenging. And I think there's a bit of grayness around that, and how everything is placed within that whole Ethereum ecosystem. But I'll just leave it at that.
That's amazing, Sam. Thank you for that. And as I said earlier, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for your time. And this is pretty much it. It's I guess time to sign off. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for attending, everyone.